Close your eyes. Let the world grow quiet. Let the breath slow and the weight of your thoughts soften into air. There is nothing to carry now, nothing to do, nothing to fix. Only this moment, only the stars outside your window, old and slow, circling like they have for thousands of years. Long ago, when the world was younger and stories had just begun, people whispered tales to the wind, soft stories, sad stories, stories that hummed beneath the skin. And now, on this quiet night, you are about to hear one of them. It's not a tale of heroes and battles, not a story of crowns or glory. This is the kind of story that moves slowly, like a river, that lives between heartbeats, that tells you what it feels like to be small in a big, mysterious world, and still matter. These are the tragic fates of mortals, caught in the gaze of gods, wrapped in the fire of love, pride, longing. And yet, even in sorrow, these stories are gentle. Let them carry you. Let them drift you toward sleep. You are safe here, and everything is okay. There once lived a man named Orpheus. He did not lift swords. He did not wear armor. He carried a lyre, a simple instrument of strings and wood, and with it he could call down silence from the skies. Birds would hush their wings to listen. The trees themselves leaned toward him. Even the rivers paused, as if their waters wished to be still enough to hear. But the most beautiful thing about Orpheus was not his music. It was who he played for. Her name was Eurydice. She was not a goddess. She was not a queen. She was something softer, a girl who walked barefoot in fields, whose laughter sounded like wind in new leaves. The first time she heard Orpheus play, she stopped moving, as though the music had reached through her ribs and touched her heart directly. From that day, she never truly left his side. They were not loud about their love. They did not shout it or boast. It was quiet, a love of glances, of shared silences, of one note in harmony with another. And then, one day, she was gone. It happened in the grass, a serpent waiting where the sun touched the earth, a single step, a bite, a moment of shock. Orpheus wasn't there. He came running too late, calling her name, his fingers shaking as he held her. But there was no music in the moment she left, only stillness, only the weight of what could no longer be sung. He buried her beneath the trees where they had first met, and then he stopped playing. The world felt different without her. The lyre remained untouched. The winds passed, confused, wondering where his music had gone. And still, he sat in silence. Days passed, and then more. And then, Orpheus stood up. He picked up his lyre, and he began to walk, not toward home, not toward the future, but toward the place the living are told never to go. He walked into shadow, past the hills and fields and meadows, past the birds that used to sing for him, toward a cave where the sun never entered, the entrance to the land of the dead. No mortal had walked there and returned, but Orpheus had never cared much for rules. He stepped into the darkness, and he played. He played as he walked through the blackness. The walls around him did not echo. They listened. He crossed the river Styx in silence, his song carrying him across the boat where Charon, the silent ferryman, did not ask for coin. Even Cerberus, the great three-headed hound that guarded the gates of the underworld, curled up beside Orpheus's music and closed its eyes. Deep within, in the coldest part of the world, Orpheus found the throne of Hades and Persephone. He did not kneel. He did not speak. He simply raised his lyre and played. The song he played was not like others. It had no beginning and no end. It was made of all the moments he'd shared with Eurydice, the way she looked at dawn, the way she leaned on his shoulder without asking, the way she made silence feel like company. It was not a demand, not a plea. It was a memory placed gently into the hands of the gods, and it was enough. Persephone's gaze softened first. Even Hades, whose heart was colder than stone, looked down. Finally, the god of death spoke. "Take her," he said, "but one rule, you must not look back. Not until you both are fully among the living." Orpheus nodded. His hands trembled. The path back was longer than before. He could not see her, but he could feel her, just behind him. the echo of her steps, the warmth of her presence. He wanted to look, just once, just to see her. But he did not. Not yet. They walked and walked until the entrance to the living world glowed ahead like a lantern in fog, and just before he stepped into the light, he turned. Their eyes met. She was there, alive, beautiful. But in that instant, the spell shattered. She reached for him, her mouth opened, and then she vanished. Not with a scream, not with anger, but like mist in morning sun. He cried out, but the underworld was silent once more. He returned to the surface alone. He never sang again. His lyre lay untouched beside him. He wandered, and the world slowly forgot his name. But sometimes, they say, on a quiet night, when the stars are gentle and the trees stop moving, a single note might rise from nowhere, the last note of a song for someone he could not save. Far from where Orpheus grieved, another boy stood at the edge of a tower, wings on his shoulders, staring at the open sky. His name was Icarus. His father, Daedalus, had built the wings, feather and wax bound by genius and desperation. They were prisoners, locked high above the sea by a jealous king. There were no doors in the tower, but Daedalus had never needed doors. He built freedom from feathers. He strapped the wings to Icarus's arms, fastened his own and turned to him. "Fly carefully," he said. "Not too close to the sea. The waves will pull you down. Not too close to the sun. The heat will melt the wax. Stay in the middle. Stay with me." Icarus nodded. He smiled. They jumped. The air caught them. For the first time, Icarus flew. The wind raced past him. The sea fell away. The world shrank. He laughed and rose. His father called out, but the sky was calling louder. Icarus wanted more, higher, closer to the sun, to touch the fire above. The wax began to soften. One feather slipped free, then another. He beat his arms faster, but it was too late. The wings unraveled, and the boy fell. Daedalus turned just in time to see the splash far below. The sea was quiet again. It has carried Icarus's name ever since, a reminder written in waves. Some say he was foolish, some say he was brave, but none can forget the beauty of his flight and the silence that followed it. In another corner of Greece, far from the sea, there lived a queen named Niobe. She was proud of her city, her family, her children. 14, they say, 7 sons, 7 daughters. They were her joy, her strength, her proof that she had been blessed beyond measure. And one day during a festival to the goddess Leto, Niobe stood before the people and laughed. "Why honor Leto?" she said. "She had only 2 children, Apollo and Artemis. I have 14. Should I not be worshipped instead?" The sky darkened, no thunder, no storm, just shadow, and from the heavens came arrows. Apollo struck the sons, Artemis the daughters. One by one they fell, like petals from a tree. Some say 1 daughter lived, some say none. Niobe fled to the mountains, her pride, her voice, her joy, gone. She sat on a cliff and wept until the gods took pity and turned her to stone. A waterfall now flows where she once sat, and even now it is said it tastes of salt. The water still whispers her name, though few remember why. But sorrow, like water, always finds its way back to the surface. And so we drift onward, past cliffs and rivers, and across forgotten hills, where another girl once wandered, her bare feet brushing soft grass and her hands collecting wildflowers like secrets. She was Persephone, daughter of the harvest, laughter of springtime. The earth bloomed behind her wherever she walked. Trees seemed to wake when she approached. Birds circled low, curious. She didn't speak often, but the land listened to her, and in return she gave it life. But even in spring, there are shadows, and one watched her, a god wrapped in silence and stone. Hades, ruler of the underworld, saw her once and never forgot. He said nothing. He waited. And one day, when the world was looking the other way, the ground split open beneath her. No cry, no warning. just a crack in the world, and she was gone. Her mother, Demeter, searched the skies and fields and mountains. Days passed, then weeks. Crops withered, rain turned to ash. The world without Persephone began to crumble. At last, Demeter found the truth and thundered toward Olympus, grief blooming into rage. The gods listened, as they often did, only when silence broke. A compromise was made. Persephone would return, but not entirely. She had eaten in the underworld. Just a few seeds, just a few bites. But that was enough. Part of her now belonged below. And so it was agreed, half the year with her mother, half in the dark. And every spring, when the flowers bloom suddenly and birds remember their songs, it is her, Persephone, returning. And every autumn, when leaves fall and the earth slows, it is her leaving again. Some say she was stolen, some say she chose to stay. Maybe it was both. Maybe she found a kind of power in the silence, a throne in the dark. After all, even queens begin as girls picking flowers, and so the seasons turn, not just in the sky, but inside us. Light, then dark, bloom, then rest, joy, then silence, always returning, always beginning again. The world turned, slowly and quietly, with Persephone above and below, life and stillness balancing like breath in a sleeping chest. And while the seasons shifted in rhythm, people on the earth carried their own burdens, small against the vastness of sky, yet heavy as stone. There was a man named Sisyphus, clever beyond what the gods deemed acceptable. He had a tongue like silver, sharp and shining, and a mind that turned every law into a game. He tricked death once, chained it like a dog, and laughed while the world stood still, with no one dying, no one passing on. But the gods do not take kindly to being mocked, so they punished him not with fire, not with chains, but with a simple task. Push a stone up a hill, that's all, push it to the top. But each time he reached the peak, the stone slipped free and rolled back down, day after day, year after year, forever. The cruelest punishments are not loud. They are quiet, repeating, the kind that make the hours stretch and the soul ache slowly. And so Sisyphus pushes still, a man caught in effort without end, breath without rest, purpose without peace. Not far from where his rock rolled endlessly, another soul was learning a quieter kind of grief. Her name was Echo, and her voice was a gift. Birds paused to listen, mountains leaned closer to hear her stories. But she loved too much, and she trusted the wrong gods. One day she saw Zeus, the king of the heavens, wrapped in secrecy. She protected him, she lied for him. And for that, Hera, the queen of storms and jealousy, cursed her. "You will no longer speak freely," Hera said. "You will only repeat the last words spoken to you." And just like that, Echo's own voice betrayed her. She could no longer sing her own thoughts, no longer express wonder or warning or love. She wandered alone, half her voice missing, half her soul unheard. And then she saw him, a boy named Narcissus, with eyes like still water and hair like dusk. She followed him silently, hiding behind trees, her love swelling like storm clouds. One day, he spoke. "Who's there?" he said. "There," Echo whispered. "Come out," he said. "Out," she answered, stepping forward. He saw her and laughed. Not cruelly, not kindly, just indifferently. And he left, not knowing he had just broken something fragile. Echo faded bit by bit, until only her voice remained, trapped in caves and cliffs, repeating others, never forming her own. And Narcissus? He walked on, still alone, until he saw a pool of water, still and bright like a mirror. He leaned closer, and what he saw, his own reflection, caught him. He fell in love with the image, not knowing it was his own. He stayed there, staring, unable to move, unable to leave, until he too faded into the ground. A flower grew there, white petals and golden heart, named after him. Sometimes the greatest tragedy is not in losing someone else, but in never really finding yourself. And so these myths hum, low and gentle, warning and wondering and watching. Not to frighten, but to show. Even in loss, even in longing, there is a rhythm, a stillness, a place where the story rests. The myths breathe on, quietly, like the ocean when no one is watching, like the thoughts that come just before sleep. Somewhere far from the echoing hills and fading reflections, there lived a sculptor named Pygmalion. He lived alone by the sea, shaping marble with patient hands. He saw the world clearly, too clearly, the flaws of people, the cruelty, the pettiness. He swore never to love, never to be vulnerable. He turned instead to stone, not just in his work, but in his heart. And then he began to carve. The statue started as an idea, a shape in his mind. But as the days passed, and his chisel chipped away imperfection, it became something more. A woman, beautiful beyond beauty, not because she was flawless, but because she was still. Silent, gentle. The sculptor named her Galatea. And slowly, the lines between marble and memory blurred. He spoke to her, he dressed her, he placed flowers at her feet. He kissed her cold lips and whispered soft promises into ears of stone. The gods watched, and for once they did not mock. Perhaps they saw the loneliness behind the love. Perhaps they were lonely too. So one night as moonlight wrapped the sea in silver, Aphrodite, goddess of love, breathed a thread of warmth into Galatea's chest. When Pygmalion returned, she blinked and smiled and touched his face. She was real, alive. And he, the man who had given up on love, learned that even stone can soften. Not all prayers go unanswered. Not all love ends in loss, but not all gods are kind. In a valley green and gold, near the edge of where the mountains begin to grow teeth, there lived a king named Pentheus. He ruled with order, with lines drawn clearly, with laws made sharp as spears. He did not trust chaos. He did not like what he could not control, and he did not believe in Dionysus, the god of wine, of madness, of wild joy, of truth that comes only after the walls fall down. Pentheus banned his worship, said no drums should beat in his city, no dances in the forest, no laughter past reason. But Dionysus is not a god who stays quiet. He walked among mortals, disguised, smiling, soft-voiced. He invited Pentheus to see for himself. "Come," he said, "see the truth." And the king, curious, followed, into the woods, into the wild. The air grew sweet and strange. Women danced in circles, eyes glittered like stars. Pentheus, disguised, watched from behind a tree. He laughed, then sneered, then stepped forward, but they saw him. And in their ecstasy, their divine madness, they did not see a king. They saw prey. They saw a spy. And they tore him apart, not knowing it was their ruler, not knowing it was one of their own. When the sun rose, silence returned to the woods. Dionysus stood alone, and somewhere, laughter echoed, not cruel, not kind, just inevitable. Sometimes what you refuse to understand is what undoes you. Sometimes, too much order is a kind of madness. The wind carried the scent of crushed grapes and pine through the valley, and the laughter that had once rung wild now faded like mist in morning sun. In the distance, a flute played somewhere, high and reedy, barely there. And elsewhere, far from the forests of Dionysus and the broken pride of Pentheus, a young girl was spinning thread. Her name was Arachne. Her fingers were fast, too fast for anyone else to match. They danced across the loom like light on water, weaving scenes that no mortal had ever seen in thread before. The people marveled. Some said her skill was divine, but Arachne disagreed. "I taught myself," she said. "No gods helped me. I'm better than any of them." And the gods heard. Athena, goddess of wisdom and craft, came down not as a goddess but as an old woman, robes plain, voice soft. "You should be more humble," she said. "The gods gave you this gift." But Arachne did not bend. "I am the gift," she said. So Athena revealed herself, radiant and cold. "Then let us see who truly weaves best," she said, and they began. 2 looms, 2 women, 1 immortal, 1 mortal. Thread by thread they wove. Athena shaped images of the gods, noble, powerful, glorious. Arachne, bold and unafraid, wove the gods' mistakes, their lies, their cruelties, their trickery and pride. When they finished, both tapestries were perfect. But Arachne's truth burned more deeply. Athena, in fury and shame, tore the work apart. Arachne stood still. She did not cry. She only looked away, as if waiting for punishment to pass. And then, gently, Athena touched her. "You will still weave," she said, "but not as a girl." And Arachne's limbs thinned, her fingers multiplied, her form softened and curled. She became the first spider. Ever since, she has hung in corners and branches, spinning silver lines in silence, not in anger but in remembrance. Weaving stories the world tries to forget, and the world does forget, often. It forgets how to listen, how to look carefully, how to sit still. But some stories wait anyway. There was once a boy named Phaethon. He was told the sun was his father, the mighty Helios who drove the chariot of day across the sky. But Phaethon wasn't sure. The other boys laughed. So he went to the palace of the sun, golden and bright, and asked, "Are you really my father?" Helios rose from his throne and embraced him. "Yes," he said, "ask anything, and it is yours." Phaethon, bold with sudden certainty, asked to drive the chariot. Helios hesitated. "Not that," he whispered. "Not this." But a promise made by a god is unbreakable. So the boy climbed aboard. The horses, fire-born, wild, older than the moon, sensed the difference. The reins trembled in Phaethon's hands. He tried to steer, but he was too light, too human. The sun dipped too low, forests burned. Then it swung too high, oceans froze. The earth screamed in silence, and Zeus, to save the world, hurled a bolt of lightning from the clouds. The chariot shattered. The boy fell. He fell through cloud and ash and fire until the river Eridanus caught his broken body. His sisters wept for years, their tears turning into amber that still lies in riverbeds. Sometimes the light we reach for burns. Sometimes the truths we demand are too heavy to hold. But even then, the world keeps spinning. Somewhere along the turning world, beneath quiet skies and behind a veil of ivy-covered ruins, there lived a woman with power in her hands and sorrow in her veins. Her name was Medea. Born of the sun's bloodline, raised among spells and sea winds, she carried magic not like a tool, but like a memory. When Jason, the hero of the Argo, arrived in her homeland seeking the Golden Fleece, he did not know her name, but the gods did. They whispered it to him without his knowing. And when she saw him, golden-haired, bold, full of dreams, she did not see a thief. She saw possibility. Love, when struck by gods, does not arrive gently. It descends like a storm. She helped him, betrayed her family, broke sacred oaths, spilled blood under moonlight, all for him. And when he took the fleece and her heart and sailed away, she went with him, across the sea, into exile, into story. Together they built a life, children, a home. But men forget quickly. Jason sought power. He married another, a princess with wealth and name, and Medea. Medea remembered everything. The stories tell what she did next in whispers. Some say she killed the new bride with a cursed gift. Some say fire danced where her eyes once wept. Some say she even silenced her own children, not from hate, but from the deepest grief, so they would not be used against her. The truth lies somewhere between love and revenge, and in that space Medea disappeared. Some say she flew away in a chariot drawn by dragons. Others say she faded into myth. But in the echo of her name, you can still feel the weight of a woman who gave everything, and became a storm when it was taken. Elsewhere, under skies thick with dust and winds that smelled of copper, a king faced a riddle. Oedipus, who had been cast away as a child, who had grown far from the roots of his bloodline, arrived at the gates of Thebes where a creature waited, the Sphinx. Half lion, half woman, she guarded the city with a riddle that had no mercy. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 in the day, and 3 in the evening? She asked. Oedipus, with steady breath, answered, Man. As a child he crawls, then walks, then leans on a cane. The Sphinx screamed and fell to dust. The city opened its arms to him. They gave him the crown. They gave him a queen. They gave him his destiny. But fate is never what it seems. The queen he married, Jocasta, was his own mother. The prophecy he'd been cast away to avoid had fulfilled itself in perfect silence. And when the truth surfaced, as all truths do, Jocasta ended her own life. Oedipus blinded himself, not as punishment, but as mercy. For there are things in this world that are too terrible to see, and among them is the past. He wandered after that, a blind man with blood on his hands and riddles in his mind. But even in his exile, some say he found peace. That in the end the gods took him in. That maybe, just maybe, understanding arrived too late, but not too late to matter. These stories do not end with triumph. They do not end with certainty, but they do end in stillness. And perhaps that is enough. A stillness, like sleep, does not mean nothingness. It means something deeper. A place where the world hums low and slow and memory softens into mist. Somewhere within that mist walked a man named Bellerophon. He was not born a hero, though fate seemed to circle him like a hawk. He tamed Pegasus, the winged horse, with a golden bridle sent by the gods. Together they soared, wind beneath them, clouds parting before them. They slayed the chimera, a beast with the breath of fire and the hunger of nightmares. They brought peace where chaos had taken root. But victory is a heavy crown, and Bellerophon, like many before him, looked upward too long. He believed he belonged among the gods. So one morning he mounted Pegasus and rode higher, past the hills, past the moon, past the sky itself, toward Olympus, but no mortal may reach the home of gods uninvited. Zeus watched. He sent a single horsefly, small, forgettable. It bit Pegasus and the horse bucked. Bellerophon fell. He fell for a long time. And when he landed, bones shattered, wings gone, he did not die. Instead, he lived, alone, crippled, forgotten. The gods had not killed him. They had done something worse, left him to remember. To sit with the echo of the sky he could no longer touch. Sometimes punishment is not in pain, but in the silence after pride. Across the sea, in a city wrapped in song and shadows, another man wrestled with pride of a different kind. His name was King Midas. He loved wealth, the shine of it, the feel of it, the promise that it would fill whatever emptiness he could not name. One day, he helped a stranger, a drunk lost in the woods. He brought him home, fed him, offered kindness. The stranger was no ordinary man. He was a companion of Dionysus, and Dionysus, in return, offered Midas one wish. Midas smiled. "Let everything I touch turn to gold." The god paused, then nodded. And for a moment, Midas believed he had won. The leaves in his garden gleamed. The walls of his home shimmered. He touched a stone. Gold. A flower. Gold. Bread. Gold. Water. Gold. He reached out to his daughter, laughing, and in that touch, she froze. Gold. Her smile turned still. Her eyes became hollow metal, and Midas screamed. He begged Dionysus to take the gift back, to undo what could not be undone. The god, pitying him, told him to bathe in the river Pactolus, and the curse left him, slipping from his hands into the current. That river still carries flecks of gold today. Midas learned that not all that glitters brings joy, that some gifts shine too brightly to be held, and that love, once turned to metal, cannot be warmed again. These stories drift across time, not as warnings, but as mirrors, each face, each fate, reflecting pieces of ourselves. Not because we are cursed, but because we are human. Far from palaces and thrones, on the edge of the world where olive trees leaned over cliffs and waves whispered forgotten names, there lived a humble musician named Orpheus. He was no warrior, he held no sword, but he had a lyre, and with it he could stir the heart of stone, the tears of gods, the silence of night itself. His love was Eurydice, quiet and kind. Their days were gentle, their laughter soft, but happiness is fragile, and the world does not always wait for goodbyes. One morning she was gone, bitten by a snake, breath stilled before she had the chance to say anything at all. Orpheus broke, but he did not shatter. He sang. With trembling hands and hollow eyes, he walked to the mouth of the underworld. He descended singing, past ghosts, past shadows, past gates and guards. Even Cerberus, the three-headed hound of Hades, paused and lay down at the sound of his song. He stood before Hades and Persephone and played. The music spoke of love lost, of days too short, of hands reaching and never finding. It was not grand, it was not clever, it was honest, and even in that dark realm, tears fell. Hades agreed to return Eurydice, with one condition. Orpheus must not look back, not until both had reached the surface. And so they walked, he in front, she behind, step after step, closer to light, closer to life. But doubt is louder than silence. He couldn't hear her, he couldn't feel her, he feared it was all a trick. And just as the first sunlight touched his face, he turned. For a moment he saw her, eyes full of hope, almost smiling. Then she faded, gently, as if she had never been. Orpheus returned alone. He sang no more. Some say he wandered into the woods and let the world forget him. Some say the trees remember his songs, and the wind. It still hums his sorrow. Not every journey has a second chance. Not every heart can wait forever. But love, once sung, never truly disappears. It becomes the silence between notes, the pause between dreams, the quiet just before sleep. Not far from where songs once echoed through the trees, a man stood staring into a mirror. His name was Theseus, Prince of Athens, raised in a world of rules and riddles, strength and legacy. But beyond the sea, across a tide of sorrow, lay Crete, and within it a labyrinth, deep, twisting, built by Daedalus, master of craft, for a monster the world could not forgive. The Minotaur, half man, half bull, he had been born from pride and punishment, fed on the mistakes of men. Each year, young Athenians were sent to his maze as tribute. None returned. Theseus volunteered. He sailed not with fear, but with fire. And when he arrived, he met Ariadne, the daughter of the Cretan king. She saw something in him, not just courage but clarity. She gave him a thread spun from her own hand. "Tie this to the entrance," she whispered. "Unwind it as you go, so you may find your way back." He entered the labyrinth. Stone walls swallowed sound. Time bent. But he found the beast. And he fought. It was not just muscle that won. It was memory. It was rage. It was the echo of every name the monster had taken. And when it was done, he followed the thread, winding back toward light, breathless and bloodied. Ariadne waited. He took her with him. But the sea has moods, and fate has turns. On the island of Naxos, Theseus left her as she slept. No reason is given in the old songs, only that he sailed away without her. Some say Dionysus found her there and made her his bride, crowning her with stars. Others say she stood alone at dawn, her thread unraveling into the sea. When Theseus returned to Athens, he forgot to change the sails, black instead of white, the sign that he had survived. His father, King Aegeus, watching from the cliffs, saw the dark sails and leapt into the sea. It is still called the Aegean, and so even in triumph, sorrow bloomed. Not all heroes are kind, not all victories are clean, but in the distance, under the same sky, Daedalus remained, the maker of mazes, the father of invention. He had built the labyrinth that held the Minotaur, but he also held his son Icarus, and together they were prisoners of the same king they once served. So Daedalus built wings, feathers and wax, hope stitched with caution. "Do not fly too low," he warned. "The sea will swallow you, and do not fly too high, the sun will melt the wax." Icarus nodded, but flight is a dangerous joy. He soared, laughter in his lungs, wind on his skin, higher, higher, past caution, past memory. The wax wept, the wings broke, and Icarus fell, singing into the sea. Daedalus flew on, alone. Some say he landed safely in Sicily. Others say he never truly landed anywhere again, only walked in silence, always looking up. Sometimes a father gives all he can and still cannot protect. Sometimes a warning becomes a story, and sometimes the sky still mourns,